Childhood is more than just a phase of growth. It's the foundation for mental health, emotional resilience, and lifelong well-being. Every interaction, every lesson, and every challenge a child faces shapes how they process emotions, handle stress, and form relationships as they move through life. In an increasingly complex world, understanding how mental health develops from early childhood is crucial. The experiences children have with their parents, caregivers, educators, and peers directly influence their confidence, emotional intelligence, and psychological adaptability. So, how can families, schools, and communities foster mental health in children from the very beginning? What are the key elements of emotional strength that every child deserves to learn? By exploring childhood mental health, we can equip young minds with the tools they need to navigate life with resilience, self-awareness, and confidence. Let's dive into the essential role of early emotional development and how it shapes mental well-being for years to come. Welcome to Seeds of Tomorrow, a space where mental health, education, and emotional resilience come together to build a brighter future. How childhood mental health develops. A lifelong foundation. Childhood mental health does not emerge overnight. It is gradually shaped by relationships, environments, emotional experiences, and cognitive development. A child's ability to regulate emotions, build resilience, and develop a stable sense of self depends on early interactions with caregivers, educators, and peers. When a child's emotional needs are met consistently, they learn to trust their feelings, manage stress, and develop healthy social bonds. But if they face emotional neglect, excessive pressure, or instability, they may struggle with self-esteem, anxiety, or difficulty processing emotions. Understanding how childhood mental health evolves over time helps caregivers nurture strong emotional foundations that allow children to thrive in adolescence and adulthood. Key stages of childhood mental health development. Infancy, 0 to 2 years. Building emotional security. Babies learn to associate comfort and safety with caregivers. Responsive parenting fosters trust and emotional regulation. For example, a baby who is comforted when they cry develops secure attachment, feeling safe to express emotions. Early childhood, 3 to 6 years. Exploring emotional expression. Children start identifying emotions and learning self-regulation techniques. Social interactions shape confidence and communication skills. For example, kids who are taught to name their emotions instead of suppressing them develop stronger emotional intelligence. Middle childhood, 7 to 12 years. Developing resilience and social bonds. Friendships influence self-esteem and emotional security. Academic pressure and social expectations impact mental well-being. For example, children who receive encouragement rather than criticism when struggling with schoolwork develop higher self-confidence. Adolescence, 13 to 18 years. Identity and emotional independence. Teens experience self-discovery, peer influence, and emotional shifts. Social media, academic stress, and personal expectations affect mental resilience. For example, adolescents with strong parental support and open communication handle stress and peer pressure more effectively. Factors that shape childhood mental health. Family environment. A child's emotional safety depends on how caregivers respond to their needs. Social interactions, friendships, school dynamics, and peer support influence self-esteem. Cognitive growth and learning. Early education shapes emotional intelligence and resilience. Digital influence. Social media and screen time impact emotional well-being. Trauma and stability. Childhood stressors, loss, or neglect can affect long-term mental health. For example, A child raised in a nurturing, emotionally supportive home develops higher resilience against stress, while a child exposed to frequent emotional neglect may struggle with self-regulation. Supporting childhood mental health for a strong future. Encourage open emotional expression. Let children talk about their feelings without fear. Teach coping mechanisms early. Introduce breathing techniques, journaling, or mindfulness. Large. Model healthy emotional responses. Caregivers should demonstrate self-regulation in stressful situations. Balance technology and real-world interactions. Promote offline playtime, creativity, and family bonding. Breathed, emotionally safe spaces. Children should feel secure discussing concerns without judgment. For example, schools that implement mental health education help students develop stronger emotional intelligence, conflict resolution skills, and resilience. The power of early mental health foundations. Childhood mental health is the root of emotional resilience, self-esteem, and cognitive well-being. By nurturing emotional intelligence, validating feelings, and providing structured support, caregivers and educators set children up for lifelong mental wellness. Support childhood mental health today. It shapes the emotional strength of future generations. Early mental health challenges and their long-term impact. The experiences and emotional environment a child grows up in shape their mental health in lasting ways. Early challenges, whether in the form of emotional neglect, excessive stress, or unstable social connections, can have long-term consequences that affect confidence, resilience, and emotional regulation well into adulthood. When children lack emotional support or face excessive pressure, they develop adaptive coping mechanisms, some healthy, some harmful. Understanding these challenges early allows caregivers and educators to intervene, offering the necessary support to prevent long-term struggles. Common early mental health challenges. Emotional suppression and neglect. Children who are discouraged from expressing emotions may struggle with emotional regulation later in life. Feeling ignored or dismissed creates self-doubt, leading to anxiety and difficulty forming close relationships. For example, a child constantly told to stop crying may grow up suppressing emotions, making it difficult to express vulnerability as an adult. High-stress environments and pressure-based learning. Excessive academic or social pressure leads to perfectionism, self-criticism, and anxiety. Children who experience constant comparison or high expectations may develop a fear of failure, affecting confidence. For example, a child pressured to always be the best may struggle with self-worth when they face setbacks. Unstable social bonds and isolation. Difficulty forming friendships or experiencing exclusion impacts self-esteem and emotional security. Children who lack consistent social support may struggle with trust and connection as adults. A child frequently left out in social settings may develop avoidance behaviors, fearing rejection later in life. Early exposure to digital overload. Overuse of screens and social media impacts emotional regulation and cognitive focus. Excessive digital engagement creates reliance on external validation, affecting self-image. For example, children who spend more time on social media than in real-life interactions may struggle with in-person communication and emotional depth. How these challenges impact long-term mental health. Difficulty processing emotions. Suppressed feelings lead to anxiety, mood swings, or emotional shutdown. Self-doubt and perfectionism. The fear of failure creates cycles of self-criticism and avoidance of challenges. Struggles with relationships. Lack of early emotional validation affects trust, intimacy, and vulnerability. Reduced resilience to stress. Without early coping mechanisms, stress tolerance decreases in adulthood. Reliance on external validation. Social media and comparison habits shape long-term self-perception. For example, studies show that adults who experienced emotional neglect in childhood are more likely to struggle with self-expression, conflict resolution, and building healthy relationships. Don't just watch, be part of the journey. Like, share, and let's spread knowledge together. Preventative strategies, supporting mental health early. Encourage open emotional discussions. Teach children that all emotions are valid. Reduce fear-based learning. Focus on growth, effort, and self-confidence rather than perfectionism. Prioritize social and emotional development. Nurture friendships, empathy, and communication skills. Limit excessive digital exposure. Balance screen time with real-world interactions and mindfulness practices. Provide stability and support. Create consistent emotional environments that allow children to feel safe expressing themselves. For example, families who integrate daily emotional check-ins help children develop stronger self-awareness and resilience. The power of early intervention. Childhood mental health challenges don't have to define a child's future. With intentional emotional guidance, supportive environments, and proactive mental health education, caregivers and educators can help children build resilience, develop confidence, and overcome emotional obstacles before they turn into lifelong struggles. Prioritizing emotional support today ensures stronger mental well-being for generations to come. Strategies for supporting childhood mental health. Mental health in childhood lays the foundation for emotional resilience, self-worth, and cognitive adaptability. When caregivers, educators, and communities proactively support mental well-being, children develop healthy coping mechanisms, stronger relationships, and a greater ability to navigate challenges throughout life. Implementing structured strategies helps children feel safe, understood, and empowered, ensuring their emotional development is nurtured in both personal and social settings. Creating emotionally supportive environments. Encourage open conversations about emotions. Teach children that all feelings are valid and should be expressed. Use language that normalizes emotional discussions, avoiding dismissal or judgment. For example, instead of saying, "Stop crying," say, "I see you're upset. What's making you feel this way?" Model healthy emotional regulation. Children mirror the emotional responses of caregivers. Demonstrate stress management, calm reactions, and problem-solving techniques. For example, if frustrated, express, "I'm feeling overwhelmed, so I'm taking deep breaths to calm down." Validate and reinforce self-worth. Provide consistent encouragement and reassurance. Avoid comparison-driven praise. Focus on effort, growth, and emotional awareness. For example, instead of, "You're better than others at this," say, "You've worked hard and I see your progress." Provide stability and routine. Predictable environments help children feel secure. Structure supports emotional regulation and confidence building. For example, Consistent morning and bedtime routines improve emotional stability and reduce anxiety. Educational strategies for mental health awareness. Integrate emotional learning in schools. Teach emotional intelligence alongside academics. Include lessons on empathy, stress management, and self-awareness. For example, schools that introduce emotion journals help students process feelings effectively. Promote inclusive social interaction. Encourage teamwork, problem-solving, and open communication. Foster spaces where children feel accepted and understood. For example, classrooms that implement peer support systems see greater confidence and emotional connection among students. Provide mental health resources in schools. Offer access to counselors, mindfulness programs, and safe discussion spaces. Normalize seeking support for emotional challenges. For example, schools with mental health clubs help students develop self-regulation techniques for stress and anxiety. Shift learning from perfection to growth. Encourage curiosity rather than fear-based performance expectations. Teach resilience in failure instead of shame or self-doubt. For example, instead of grading harshly, reinforce learning through reflection and improvement. Digital and social boundaries for mental well-being. Limit excessive digital exposure. Balance screen time with real-world interactions. Encourage offline activities that promote creativity and connection. For example, families who implement tech-free dinners experience stronger emotional bonds and deeper conversations. Teach mindful technology use. Help children recognize the difference between reality and digital distortion. Encourage engagement with educational, supportive, and growth-oriented content. For example, teens who curate positive, uplifting social media feeds have higher emotional stability and confidence. Strengthen social skills and emotional resilience. Guide children toward meaningful friendships that support emotional well-being. Teach conflict resolution without aggression or avoidance. For example, schools with structured peer mentorship programs help students build confidence and emotional awareness. The role of caregivers and communities. Childhood mental health thrives when emotional intelligence is actively nurtured rather than left to chance. By encouraging emotional expression, reinforcing self-worth, and providing structured support, caregivers, educators, and communities can shape resilient children who feel empowered in their emotional and psychological growth. Investing in childhood mental health today builds stronger, emotionally aware generations for the future. Mental health begins in childhood. Childhood is the starting point of emotional resilience, self-confidence, and mental well-being. The experiences children have, how they are nurtured, taught, and supported emotionally shape their ability to navigate life's challenges. Mental health is not something to be addressed later in life. It must be cultivated from the very beginning. When caregivers and educators prioritize emotional intelligence, open communication, and psychological growth, they empower children to develop strong coping skills, healthy relationships, and a balanced sense of self-worth. Neglecting childhood mental health can lead to struggles that persist into adulthood, affecting confidence, emotional regulation, and even physical well-being. But investing in mental health early transforms challenges into growth opportunities, ensuring that children feel safe expressing their emotions, navigating difficulties, and building a fulfilling life. By nurturing emotional resilience today, we are planting the seeds of tomorrow, building a future where mental well-being flourishes across generations. If you found this valuable, don't forget to follow and subscribe for more insights. Thank you for being part of our community. See you in the next video.